This is Lisa Cove with DoD Fed Globe, and today I have with me Yossi Herzog, and he has come all the way from Israel to talk to the American public about open service in Israel.
I am a sergeant in reserves in the Israel Defense Force. I'm openly gay and served as such my entire service. Since 1993, the Israeli military has allowed homosexuals to serve in all levels of the Israel Defense Force. Previous 1993, homosexuals were still allowed to serve openly, but they had to go through special security screenings for higher posts, and that was seen as discriminatory back in 1993. Ever since, there's been a standing order from the General Staff that any acts of homophobia are to be treated in a court-martial by the strictest punitions available. Now, I personally served in the coordinator of government activities in the territories, mostly in Hebron, and towards the end of my service in the headquarters of my unit in Tel Aviv, in our Ministry of Defense compound, like the Pentagon for Israel. I was out from the very beginning of my service. In my basic training, I told everyone with whom I served, and never encountered any form of homophobia. I met people who had never before in their lives met homosexuals, or so they thought. I met open homosexuals. People who had never met an openly homosexual man asked me questions with a childlike curiosity that I think all non-straight people have encountered at times. Though I was never treated with anything but curiosity and respect, I never received disgust or threats. When I was still in training, I served under a base commandant who later went on to head the Gaza DCL. A formidable man, a colonel, and a religious Jewish man. I applied for special permission via my commander to leave the base, which is not something that's normally allowed when one is serving in any kind of training, to go back to Tel Aviv, my home, to march in the Gay Pride parade that we have every year. I was called in to meet with the commanders, and with me was brought the other openly homosexual soldier who was also in training with me. We were told by the commanders that we should go, leave, take public transportation. We had 8 hours in which to march. We were to make sure that our uniform was neatly pressed, tucked in at all times, our shoes were shined, and that we should do the IDF proud. I went, marched, and returned with a new cover for my dog tags, which have to be covered at all times in the IDF to prevent glare. I wrapped around them a rainbow ribbon that I had purchased at the Pride, and remained on for the duration of my service, and I still use it when I go back to my reserves. I found throughout the Army that, much like in the United States, it's a melting pot, and we had people from all walks of life, from all over the country, worldly, cosmopolitan people who had lived all over the world, in large cities, and people who'd come from small villages. We had Jews, Christians, Arabs, we had immigrants, we had older people. All kinds of people came together with it. And it turned out that this mix of people provided such a safe place for the gays inside that many of my friends used the Army as their safe place to come out. Not that they couldn't have done it at home to their parents or in their high schools before, but like so many LGBT people know, it's difficult and uncomfortable, and people don't want to come out till they feel really safe. So the Israel Defense Forces provided that safe place, that we knew that not only would we be accepted by our comrades, but wherever anyone to have any kind of problem, the immediate commander, all the way up to the base commander, was available, and we were regularly briefed, monthly, that any kind of sexual harassment, which you were always reminded included LGBT harassment, could be reported to any member. Any member of the leadership could have homophobia reported to him or her, and phone numbers were also always given for those who were uncomfortable to go before somebody that one might see in the base. So it could be done via telephone to a new person whom we'd never met. I never had to use that phone number. I never had to use the friends that I had who told me if I ever had any kind of homophobia that they would take care of whoever was in question. For me, the army was a part of my life that I happened to be gay in, like all the rest of my life. And I think that it's a fantastic beacon to other countries that want to look about integrating their own services to see that an army can reflect one society, and Israel's does. I interacted quite extensively with other military forces because the coordinator of government activities in the territories, my unit, also wasn't responsible for the international organizations and foreign delegations, including military, that are operative in the West Bank. So I dealt quite regularly, often with rather high-up military officials from the United States. I never hid that I was homosexual, and many times my dog tag covered in a rainbow tag was out. I received telephone calls sometimes when I was on leave, because I was always available, and I received phone calls and I had to yell down the phone, "I'm sorry, I'm at a drag show. I'll call you back in a minute when I'm outdoors." Now, I don't know what was said about me behind my back, but I know I was always treated with absolute respect as a colleague and as someone who could be relied upon time and time again for any need. I know that, now, when Israel was founded in 1948, there were anti-sodomy laws in place that had been put in there by the British, who had previously had the British Mandate of then Palestine. Now, when Israel was created, the current laws on the books by the British Mandate remained in force. They were not enforced as regards sodomy. In the 70s, the public prosecutor officially announced that they would never be prosecuted, and it was only around in 88 that they bothered to actually strike the non-enforced laws off the books. I don't know when along that timescale, if ever, there was a process to allow homosexuals to serve at all in the army, because as I said, in 1993, that's when officially homosexuals, bisexuals, lesbians, and transgendered people were allowed to serve in all levels without any kind of extra security or background check, more so than any other soldier would go through. I was 8 when that happened. And I can't imagine a time when I didn't know that every Israeli goes to the army. It doesn't matter who or what you are, you're an Israeli, you go. I can't understand what is being discussed and delayed in the process you mentioned that's taking such a long time, and what needs to be discussed, because at the end of the day, as I know it from seeing in the army, there have been incidents of homophobia in the Israeli army that had not happened to me, thank God, but they've happened. And I know that when they happened, with a swift and mighty hand, court-martials were levied out, soldiers responsible were punished severely, and it was a clear message to everyone in the forces it's not acceptable. I don't know why that couldn't happen equally in the very disciplined United Armed Forces. Without getting into anything in particular, I can let you know that every resource has always been used by the Israel security forces. Since 1948, we've been in a fight for survival, surrounded by 22 Arab nations, with whom since our creation only 2 have managed to broker a peace deal with. Most remain in a state of war with us, and the others are openly hostile. So Israel did not have any time nor desire to waste with internal discrimination amongst its own citizens, and every potential resource that could be used, and certainly the many resources that the LGBT community has to offer, along with the heterosexual community, were to be employed and done out, and if that be at home serving in the military, they should be, and if that's in missions performed abroad secretly, the same should apply. I know as well as an Israeli that there's nowhere in my government that I couldn't go as a homosexual, were it to be in more other security forces, were it to be serving open in our parliament, where we have openly homosexual serving members of parliament. There doesn't seem to be any reason to hold ourselves back because of our sexual orientations, and I'm very proud that my country hasn't felt any need to hold us back. Israel has a very strong political party system compared to the rather weak American party system. Membership in parties are not paying. Most American citizens are members of a political party. In Israel, it's the opposite. And one votes for parties by a party list system in our elections as opposed to for a specific candidate. Now, in some parties, the candidates are chosen by a governing council. In other parties, they're chosen via primaries, like in the United States. And there's been a trend towards more primaries. I simply cannot imagine, let's say, for example, in the Likud, which is currently a member of the coalition, center-right political party in Israel, and so I'll try to compare it, I suppose, to the Republican Party, turning down a potential candidate or not allowing him to participate so long as he's a member of that political party and paid his dues for running. Israel was the first country to have a female prime minister who had not come to office via a paternal prime minister or a husband who was a prime minister. The third in the world, period. But the first who was simply freely elected in the 70s, Golda Meir. And I'm a great admirer of hers. And there was no reason that the Labour Party saw, because then she was a member of the Labour Party, to hold back from employing her. She was the best woman. She came out of retirement to lead the country and did rather well. So there's no reason to hold them back. So to me, and that was in the 70s, mind you. So now we're in 2011. I can't imagine why anything to me, and obviously it's very related, why a woman shouldn't be prime minister and why a homosexual shouldn't be prime minister. I just can't imagine such a thing happening. And not only being prime minister, being a political party, you're telling me they can't even allowed to take part in a debate.
They will not let Fred Karga participate in the debate, and a good portion of their debates consist of anti-gay bigotry.
I think all the more it's not an open debate if you don't have someone who disagrees with you. So if you're not going to bring somebody who says that that's wrong, then I don't see what everyone's debating. And I'll tell you, we have openly gay members of the Knesset, which is the Israeli parliament. We have openly homosexual judges, like in the United States. We have top professors in the country. We have also what's being noticed more is in the past 5 to 10 years, the presence in the media of homosexuals has really skyrocketed. Homosexuals and lesbians, gay, bisexual, and transgender, I want to point out. I don't know how familiar you are with the Eurovision Song Contest in America because you don't get to take part. But if you did, it brought you ABBA, so you all know it. So, in Israel, we sent in 1999 Dawn International, who is a fantastic singer and happens to be a transsexual Israeli, and she won. We sent her back last year and she didn't, so I think she's done now. We sent her, happy and proud to. Since then, we've had an outbreaking on Israeli soap operas, on reality television shows, on Israeli newscasters and television presenters. Now, technically, under the Palestinian Authority, which is the authority which is moving towards state-building institutions in the West Bank, homosexuality is legal. In practice, this is not the case. Palestinian police forces, which are the security operations of the Palestinian Authority, have been documented time and time and time again of murdering homosexuals. If the Palestinian police don't murder homosexuals, more often than not, it is the families of these homosexuals who find out. Even worse is what happens entirely in the Gaza Strip, which has been ruled since 2007 by the terrorist organization Hamas, and also are rather active in the West Bank, so they're not just in the Gaza Strip. Now, according to Hamas, you have two options if you're found to be a homosexual. You can be killed, three options. You can be killed, you can commit a suicide attack against Israeli citizens to, they call it purging your moral guilt, or you can be exiled. There's actually a very good documentary, which is only in Hebrew, I'm sorry, called Jerusalem is Proud to Present, which documents, amongst other things, a Palestinian drag queen, homosexual, who lived in Ramallah and performed regularly in the gay bar The Shushan in Jerusalem. And the Hamas found out, gave him the opportunity, and they filmed his last performance as he had to then flee to, I believe, Germany in the end, because he did not want to carry out a terrorist attack.